everyone, my name is Kayla Fletcher, but likely you already know that, and welcome to Quiet Bodies. So today is going to be a tutorial on range of motion and how we achieve better and understand better range of motion in our hip joint by using the right amount of lumbar flexion, so tilting the pelvis. So I think this will be a little bit more of an interactive tutorial, so you can decide for yourself if you want to just watch or if you want to partake. It just depends on how you learn best. But we're going to go over finding a neutral pelvis and talking about what that means and what that means for your specific body. So not what it looks like on my body, but what it feels like for your body. And I'm going to give you some tools to understand how to find that. And then we'll go over some exercises that involve utilizing different tilts or different positioning of the pelvis in order to get proper control and stability from our core, but without overdoing it as a way to increase the range of motion at our legs. So to clarify that, we're going to be talking about the exercises, like any of the ab series exercises, so our single leg stretch, our hundreds, anything where we're laying on our backs and our legs are up off of the ground and we're suspending them in the air. And we're also going to talk about single leg circle and corkscrew. So for those of you that watched my older tutorial on hip clicking, this is going to be a continuation of that, because oftentimes not only do people get clicking in their hips, but they also might feel clicking in their lower back. So these are both things that we want to be able to move past and bring more structure to our body. So let's lay down and we'll talk a little bit about pelvis first and foremost. So the terminology neutral pelvis just means exactly as it sounds. This is the pelvis that you're walking around with in your day-to-day life. Your neutral pelvis is going to absorb shock the best. It's where your muscles can work together most efficiently. And then we'll talk a bit about how we tilt our pelvis in different directions in our Pilates practice in order to give us better control and stability over our legs. So when you're laying down, just place your feet on the mat comfortably with the knees bent, and you're going to feel around with your fingers and locate your hip bones, your ASIS, if there's anyone with that understanding of that terminology. So you feel around, you find them, you poke if you need to find those bones, and then I want you to place the heels of your hands on those bones, and then bring the fingertips together, the index fingers together. So you're forming a triangular shape with the hands. Okay, so wherever your index finger, your middle fingers land, that's somewhere around your pubic bone, okay? So you've got your two hip bones and your pubic bone. Now, the reason that this is important is because if you look at a bunch of different bodies in front of you, their neutral pelvis is going to look different because we all have different size glutes, different size waists, and so on and so forth. And our bodies fluctuate as we go throughout our lives. So some years, you just want to make sure that you're always understanding where your skeleton is and not moving from the stuff that's on your skeleton. Okay, so now that you've located where your hip bones are and your pubic bone, I want you to take your head, lift it up, and take a peek. And notice if you have your heels of hands resting higher or sitting up higher than your index finger. If that's the case, so it would look like this, that means you're arching your back. You're in an anterior tilt, okay? If your fingertips and the heels of your hands are resting even in a horizontal plane, that's neutral, okay? And if your fingertips are sitting higher than the heels of your hands, you're in a posterior tilt or a pelvic curl or a tuck, okay? Now, this might be blowing your mind or confusing you right now, depending on where you're at in your practice. And you might say, when I take your classes, you're always telling me to tilt my hip bones in towards my stomach. You're not telling me to have this neutral pelvis. I don't get it. I understand that, and that's very confusing. So again, this pelvis, this neutral pelvis, is the pelvis that you want to walk around in your daily life with. You do not want to walk around your daily life with an arched back or with a tucked under tailbone, right? Both of those would look pretty weird and they wouldn't serve you. But in mat Pilates, and Pilates in general, we sometimes encourage this posterior tilt of the pelvis to engage more of our abdominals and provide better support in our trunk against the weight of our legs. So when our legs are lifting up in our ab series. Okay, so now the reason why this tutorial revealed itself to me is because sometimes I have overachievers. Some of my clients are like, okay, I'm going to take that cue and I'm going to run with it. And then I start to see them tilting their pelvis this way. They're tilting that bowl of water. Just to clarify that, sometimes I call the pelvis a bowl of water and use that as a metaphor. They tilt that bowl of water towards their stomach so much that their tailbone starts lifting off of the back. So that would look like this, right? And that's now I'm over clenching too many muscle groups, and that's actually going to get in my way. I'm working too hard. In Pilates, we always want to learn how to work the right amount, okay? So let's take that into context in our ab series, because again, that little posterior tilt of the pelvis is going to encourage more strength and stability in our core. So hug your knees into your chest. And I often start the hundreds this way. And you can do the hundreds with me if you want to just throw in an extra set of hundreds today. Why not? And so bring your knees in towards your chest as far as you can, as long as there's no pain. And you'll notice that eventually your tailbone starts to curl off of the mat. And you might think to yourself, okay, that's really good. I'm really tucking under. I'm doing a really good job. But that's actually too much. So we want to have long length in our spine. So you want to connect your tailbone down. So that might mean you need to bring your knees a little further away from your chest. Find your tailbone, locate it. And then I want you to push every other segment into the mat, deeply into the floor. And now you'll feel that you've braced your body into the floor with your abdominals. Place your hands at the back of your thighs, curl up to the bottom tips of your shoulder blades, and straighten your legs to the ceiling. Now, if you noticed straightening your knees might have caused this to lift, the tighter muscles are pulling the pelvis up. So you straighten your knees as much as you can while keeping the tailbone rooted in the mat. Reach your arms forward and start to pump your arms. So that's the first variation of your hundreds. Okay, so now stay in this position and stop pumping the arms so you can focus on this. Start to lower your legs down. Okay, you're going to hit this point where you can't hold your waist into the mat anymore, and that's where you're going to tell your pelvis to tuck more, and then you continue to pump. This angle of the legs is going to be different for everyone, okay? Depends on your strength, where your body's at that day. One more breath. Okay, bring the knees in, so not really a full set of hundreds. Okay, so that was an example of a way that we would use a more pelvic curl in order to avoid arching our back, okay? So the weight of the legs, as they go closer to the floor, they get heavier and heavier for our abdominals to keep the position of our torso. We never want to let our back arch. So sometimes we pull the waist deeper in the opposite direction of the legs in order to hold them there and recruit more muscles, okay? So now let's talk about our single leg stretch. So another ab series. Our single leg stretch, yes, it's part of our stomach series, our ab series, but we're also increasing range of motion in the legs. So I reach my left leg out long. I'm opening the front of my left hip flexor, and I'm pulling my right knee in towards my chest to increase the range of motion at my hip joint and my knee joint. But what starts to happen is sometimes people go too crazy, not too crazy, but you know what I mean? They pull their knee really close into their chest so that their pelvis starts to curl off the mat. So we want that hip bone down, and then the knee comes further into the chest, and then pull in and reach, and then pull in and reach. Okay, and you might notice that one leg can come in further than the other, and so that'll just highlight and magnify your imbalances. So you're always working from this pelvis being like a box. It's always square, it's never twisty-turny. Okay, and pull in. So just to give you a direct example, I have a little bit of compression in my right hip, and when I pull my left knee in, it comes freely
It feels really easy. My right knee feels very restrictive, and I have to think about pushing my hip away as I pull my knee in to not make this happen, okay? So let's continue into the ab series. How does this show up in our double leg stretch? So a double leg stretch, we're reaching and we're trying to grab our ankles, but not at the expense of this, right? We want to get that tailbone on the mat, back of the ribs in the mat, toes pointed, okay? And then from there, you're going to reach everything out long and then circle in. Now, this is where you have to use those pelvis positions as a mechanism to train your body. So I know I'm thinking ahead. I'm going to reach my legs out, and I know I'm going to be tempted to arch my back. So if I feel that start to happen, if I feel that tipping point, I'm going to pull my hip bones deeper in. I'm going to try to tuck my tailbone in order to maintain my original start position. Okay, and then rest the head down. Now, straighten the legs up towards the ceiling. We're not going to do scissors or a single straight leg stretch because I think the point is pretty clear here with that tailbone needs to stay on the mat. But here's how it shows up in the double leg stretch, because this is where we start to burn out, and this is where we start to feel a lot of fatigue and things get a little sloppier. So head, neck, and chest is lifted. Your knees are straight and that tailbone is on the mat. Now, the tension in the hamstrings might make this hard. So sometimes people straighten their legs, but then their legs are over here, right? Then your core all of a sudden has to work much harder than when my position is here. Okay, so then those people, or if that's you, this is what starts to happen. So my hamstrings are tight. I can't have 90-degree angles up to the ceiling with my tailbone down. So I start with my legs a little further away. Then I start to do the exercise, I lower, and then I throw my legs up and my pelvis lifts with it. So with this exercise, you're going to lower down, but then you're going to lift your legs. You don't throw them up. And again, lower down, and then you lift, keeping that tailbone on the mat. Lower down, and then lift. Okay? So it still can be sharp to come up, but it's sharp with control. It's not throwing, okay, right? We go back to, Joseph called this contrology. We're learning how to control our body, whether it's in a sharp movement or a smooth movement. Okay, great. So now let's talk a bit about what I call a stage trick. So oftentimes people will be like, yeah, I'm really flexible. I'm really getting my leg close to my head. But look, my pelvis and my back is completely off of the mat. If I'm being honest with myself and I'm keeping my pelvis down, this is where my leg goes. And that's fine. That's pretty okay. So we're going to put the feet down, and you're going to go back to your neutral pelvis, right? Your feet are down. We're not doing an exercise. Back to neutral. This is the human that wants to walk around in the daily life, okay? Now, without disturbing that, bring your right leg to tabletop and bring your hands behind your thighs. Now, if you feel like your neck is doing this, I would suggest putting a pillow underneath your head. It'll just prop you up a little bit, and it won't be as strenuous on your neck, okay? And that's not a cheat, so do it if that's happening to you. Now, I want you to notice if lifting your leg up caused the back of your pelvis to lift off the mat. If it did, get that pelvis on the ground, even if it means you have to send your knee further away from your chest. Straighten your leg as much as possible, and notice if your pelvis lifted off of the mat. I want you to glue the pelvis down as you straighten the knee, and then bend. So this is a little pre-exercise. Reach. A really good exercise to prepare you for your single leg circle. Okay, reach and bend. Opposition. As your toes reach to the ceiling, I want your femur, your thigh bone, to press down into the floor. You'll get a much deeper and more effective stretch. This will help you sit up straight with your legs out in front of you for your spine stretch forward. Now keep your legs straight, or straight as it can be. You're going to bring the leg across the body and then back to center. And then across, back to center. Think about the hip staying down and the leg coming across to the left earlobe. Okay, do that twice more. This is the first part of your circle. Okay, one more, or the first movement, the first circle. Now let's go the other way. You're going to bring your leg towards your right earlobe, not to the side, earlobe, right here, and center. Make sure that your other knee isn't opening to the side. That's also a stage trick, right? That's a counterbalance. Right now we don't want that. Last one. All right, now leg is back to the middle. You're going to straighten your left leg along the mat, leaving your right leg exactly where it is. It's slightly turned out and your arms are by your side. Let's just do 3 circles in each direction. And notice as you circle your leg, does the back of your pelvis come off the mat? And then reverse for 3, and 2, and 1. All right, and then lower that leg down. Okay, let's go to the other side. Bend both knees, check, and say, like feel around. Is your pelvis neutral? If it's not, refine it. Maybe you need to tilt your pelvis a little. You're gonna tuck a little bit in order to make this happen. So remember, you can always place your hands on your pelvis to feel where you're actually at. Bring your left leg to tabletop, hands behind the back of your thigh. Begin to straighten the leg and bend. Straighten. And this side might feel completely different. Maybe it's easier. Maybe weird twisty things happen. Okay, once more. Now you're going to bring the leg across the body towards your right earlobe and back to center. And across and center. Okay, and really listening to what's happening. So these finer details of what's happening in your body really make the biggest difference in your practice. Now you're going to go to the left and back to center, understanding where to move from and how to move effectively and efficiently. Okay, 2 more. All right, last time. Now straighten your right leg, flex the foot, arms down by your side, 3 circles in each direction. And just notice, again, what happens on this side. What are your tendencies? And then you want to learn from that. Get to know your tendencies and then be a step ahead of yourself. Okay, relax the legs down. Okay, so the last exercise we're going to go over, my beautiful hair, is the corkscrew. But I just wanted to, get to know your tendencies, because that's the reason why I believe so much in classical Pilates and authentic Pilates, and why we repeat exercises, and why we basically do a very similar class each time, is because through repetition you get to know your body better and you get to understand better. If I continuously throw new material at you over and over again, then your brain is really busy with just the choreography, and it's fun and it's great and it's movement, and I think that's good too if that's kind of your style. But that's the reason why I choose to teach the way that I teach, through repetition, so that you guys can get a better handle on what's going on, and so that week after week, oh yeah, single leg circle, I've been here before, right, I know that my hip's gonna click if I don't engage my glute, and that starts to become a habit. So just that's just my 2 cents with that. Forming an efficient and effective practice, and it's not everyone's way, but that's what I believe in. So, corkscrew. Now, hip clicking isn't usually a thing, but back clicking is sometimes a thing here. So if you think back to your double leg stretch, and if you're in the club where it was really hard for you to keep the back of your knees straight and your tailbone down, this is something that you're going to work towards, but this is going to be something that's very challenging for you in this exercise. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but you just know that this is going to be challenging. So your arms are pinned by your side, your legs are straight up towards the ceiling, or as straight as they can be. Now, you'll never compromise by lifting your pelvis up in order to get your legs straighter, okay? So legs are straight as they possibly can be, glued together. They're going to go over to the right. They circle down away from you, center, and then you go to the left. You draw a left to right circle. Now your pelvis is going to be twisting, your shoulders are not. When your legs return to the ceiling, your tailbone stays down. Okay, and that's what you want to think about here. So oftentimes if you want to come up and look at me, if I have a client and they say, Kayla, my back is clicking, usually it's because they're doing this. They're just throwing their legs away and then hoping for the best, okay? So this is always done with control. And in my corkscrew, I almost feel this massage at the back of my sacrum amongst all of the hard core work. And you already learned earlier, when your legs go away from you, you don't want to arch your back. But it might mean you need to think about your hips pulling in this way, but then you need to back off with that tilt when your legs come to the ceiling, okay? So I think that basically sums it up. It's a lot of information, but I hope that there is at least a nugget of a takeaway, and if there was a light bulb that went off for you, please share it with me just so I know that it resonated. Pilates is a practice, and I truly believe if you're struggling with some of these exercises, know that you're not alone, and that's what's so amazing about it is a humbling practice, and it's going to pinpoint your strengths, and it's also going to pinpoint what you need to work on. So, and you're going to feel the results after more and more practice, and it's just going to get better and better and harder. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you and your neutral pelvis have a great day. Thanks, guys.